Dear friends, today I would like to share something about Indian education. Education in the past, the present and the future. And we are eagerly waiting to see the new education policy which is called NEP 2019. The draft has been submitted by none other than Dr. Kasturi Rangan and his team to the government of India. MHRD minister has said that after prolonged discussions and deliberations of various educationists, various stakeholders, the new education policy draft is almost ready. I am sure that the draft will be brought out for the benefit of the Indian education. And they say the new education policy will be the foundation for the next 30 years of Indian education. Therefore, we hope that the new education policy will definitely have all the elements of a progressive education, and we're waiting to see what the final policy going to be. I read out one extract from the new education policy draft submitted by Dr. Kasturi Rangan, and it says, a good educational institution is one where every student feels welcomed and cared for, where a safe and stimulating learning environment exists, where a wide range of learning experiences are offered, and where good physical infrastructure with the appropriate resources are available. While attaining these qualities must be the goal of every individual education institution, there must also be an integration and coordination across institutions and across all stages of education. This is fundamentally different from the current structure, and therefore the committee suggests that there should be a structural change of education, which is that too much of separation from lower primary to high school to secondary to what we call the undergraduation to graduation to post-graduation and so on. A lot of differences are there. So the commission suggests that that structure has to be changed, and there should be a kind of integration in between all these stages of education. And it also says another very important aspect for us to reflect is, it says we need to have curricular activities and non-curricular activities, vocational and academic, to ensure the integrity of unity, knowledge and unity of knowledge, and eliminate harmful hierarchies among and silos between different areas of learning, multidisciplinary and liberal education, that is across what we call sciences, social sciences, arts and liberal sports, etc. For a multidisciplinary world, emphasis on conceptual understanding, that is rather than rote learning and learning for exams, or creativity and critical thinking, etc. Values and ethics, it very clearly says it has to be along with the life skills we must teach the children. Life skills includes cooperation, teamwork, communication, resilience, etc. etc. A lot of beautiful, if you read the introduction, it is simply marvelous, beautifully written, and I hope government will take note of it, and in practice, with all the sincerity and commitment, they will implement it. Now, when we look at the education system in the past, we were stressing on more of individual formation, individual formation with certain values. We call it integral education, all-round education, holistic education, etc., etc. Because we have to cater the need of intellectual, social, moral, aesthetic, political, and also emotional, psychological, spiritual, etc., etc. All these aspects were the consideration of the past educational system. There were humanitarian subjects taught. There was a lot of emphasis on humanitarian and human literature, for example, subjects like history, literature, and we also had liberal arts and so on. But today the system has changed. Today we look for only job. Education is not for life. It's not about the formation of the individual. We are more of making the person more skillful and more of a professional. And therefore what is happening is, in the current education system, this is my opinion, is there is a huge dichotomy between the heart and the head. We are concentrating more on here, and as an individual, the human being, this part we are missing. And when we look at today's education, we can say the 4 C's which are taken prominence in the last 2 decades in the Indian education system. Number 1 is what we see is competition. No, you look at the private schools, whether it is private schools or trust run schools or the government school, every sector we see competition. Competition is the hallmark of today's education, and therefore what happens is students think that I have to be number 1, by hook or crook I want to get number 1. And everybody cannot be number 1. The realistic understanding is that everybody cannot be number 1. Each one is unique. Your capabilities are different, your traits are different, your talents are different. But the parents are all influencing the children in such a way that they instill a kind of false notion that you should be number 1, getting marks. So you look at just declared CBSE and ICSE results, one will really wonder, how can a student get total 100% mark in all the subjects? Some of them got 99.9, 99.8, 99.2, and most of the students are getting about 95, 96, 97, 98 and so on. Their marking system, in fact, it is harmful. In the sense, the cutoff marks in the universities will be very high, and there are very few people who are really genuinely studied, but then because of some circumstances they could not score like this, too much of marks, etc., will be left out. I think that system has to change. And so competition is one of the hallmarks of our education today, and I think it is not a healthy competition. Very often what we see is cutthroat competition. By all means, individualism is given. Too much of selfishness and centeredness we are encouraging through having this competition. And even schools, even our own schools, Christian schools, has fallen into this trap. They think that we need to be number 1, advertising and all kinds of things. And how do we select the standard of the school these days? Based on how many are getting into IITs or IIMs, etc., etc. I think that is all good, but at the same time should value everyone. Education in the past was little more different than today. In the past we never had this 10% marks, etc. But still people contributed much bigger way than today's rank holders. The second C, that's first C is competition. Second C, I think, is commercialization. Indian education has gone too much of a kind of trade and business. Commodification of even education is a very dangerous thing. It is not anymore the educational centers. It is all teaching shops, coaching centers. People are focusing only on marks, how to be successful. They are forgetting how to be efficacious. I think that is the second point which is very harmful, but that is a reality. Reality has to be understood. The stark reality is that Indian education to a great extent turned out to be commercial. Consumerism and commercialism is the second C. And the third C we can see is corruption. Corruption is almost legalized in India. You see everybody says corruption free, but the reality we see is corruption is increasing. Corruption is it's not an exception to somebody, it is also within us. We are also corrupt. Our thinking is corrupt. What we are listening is corrupt. What we are hearing is corrupt. What we are learning is corrupt. What we are observing is corrupt. Environment is corrupt. So therefore the education also is corrupt. You see malpractices, easy access of marks to copying. And we have seen the people climbing the walls of a school building somewhere in the country to give answers to their children who are writing the examinations. We see corrupt practices everywhere. So corruption is, and this has happened to the educational sector also. By hook or hook you get admission. People who are misbehaving, people who need actually psychological counseling, etc., are part of the school system, and we can't remove them, we cannot ask them to go to another school, etc. All kinds of thing. Political influence and corruption is the third C, which is very, very harmful in my opinion. And the fourth C, which is more and more obvious these days, is that communalization. Communalization doesn't limit to one group. I see communalization happening in every sector and educational system also. Even the syllabus preparation, even the pedagogical preparation, even the textbooks are so communalized. Depending upon the influence of one group, they will make it more and more visible. Communalization is actually against education. Education must be wide open, much more liberal. All of us learn to accept each other. But the moment you are communalizing, that you are saying you are narrow-minded, you are so limited. So the new education policy, I hope, as Kasturi Rangan has suggested, it must be liberal, it must be integral, it must be open, it must respect every culture, it must respect the diversity of the country, diversity of the society, cultural heritages, etc., etc. I am sure that the new final policy will be taking all these into consideration. But at this juncture, it is also good to note that at least the allegation that has come from various sectors, that the reduction of the syllabus itself shows that not so desirable things. For example, at least the news report, it says that 30% of syllabus reduction has been announced, but especially in the liberal arts, liberal humanitarian subjects, etc., their democracy, secularism, and the administrational learning, different forms of governments, religions, diversity, etc., has been removed. This is what alleged. We don't know. If so, that means that is not also a very good thing. I think India always upheld secularism, always upheld diversity, always upheld good values for all. And I am sure that our educationists will come out with apt policy responses and suggestions for the government to follow. So this is what the C's, 4 C's, which are at present what we see. But I think in the future we must have another 4 C's, which is the first C must be competence. Competence means we must work for excellence. Excellence and efficaciousness go together. There is no compromise on excellence in our schools, education institutions. And educators must be excellent, and they also create excellent people. So that is called, first C called competence. The second C is conscience. We must create that humanness, that values. I should be in-depth awareness. I should have. I should be able to critically thinking and deciding, but at the same time I should feel affectively. I should accept people. I should accept cultures. I should accept dissenting voices. I should accept. I should be sensitive to the others, sensitive to the people, the culture, the religions, the ethnicity, etc., etc. That sensitivity is called conscience. Conscience is not consciousness; it's much deeper. And the third C is called compassion. We are human beings. We are human beings. Along with this competence and conscience, we must create compassion for people. Now, for example, today we saw these migrant workers, numerous people coming out of their own places of work and going back to their villages. And we saw there how much they are suffering. They do not have enough to eat. They do not have anything to save. And there we need to feel compassion for these people. And administrators like Gandhiji, as he says, there should be a criterion for our administration. We cannot ignore people. We must be compassionate towards that. And I'm sure that all our administrators, our rulers, leaders, all must be compassionate. Then the country will progress. country will be a different country. And the fourth C is commitment. Commitment. We need to commit to the society, commit to the nature, commit to the environment, commit to the entire globe, commit to humanity. We cannot simply exploit and finish it off in my own lifetime. No, this earth belongs to the past, present and the future. The future generation, unborn generation also has a stake on this earth and its resources. Therefore, we cannot simply ignore and neglect and simply discard the ownership of this land for the future generation also. That's why the commitment part comes in. Commitment to also to oneself. Commitment to my cause. Commitment to my school, for example. Commitment to the society where I live. That's very, very important to have it. And I add up one more C is, that we need is coherence. For example, what I say and what I do must be one. I can't speak one thing and I can do the opposite of it. That is not educational teaching. A value-based education, personal values, societal values or social values must be taught to the children. And that also must be part of the new education policy. Government of India has brought out this draft public for suggestions, etc., and we have given suggestions in to the government. We had met the minister, suggested to him, and in fact we have taken the education policy entire thing in a book form. We have published also Educating India, and in that one we have suggested very, very many good points. And one of them is that human values, moral values, social values and excellence, etc., must be upheld. And we agree with the Commission's suggestions that there should be a reform, there should be an integral formation, there should be also the value-based education for the future. I am sure that if we take into these the 4 or 5 C's which I said the later part, that is conscience, competence, compassion, commitment and coherence in our life, I am sure that we can overcome this corruption, commercialization, competition and communalization. That C's are outdated. That is not good for the country. I am sure that we will look for this, the latter 5 C's which I told. I am sure that Indian education has a future in the coming days with the help of all of us educators and all the stakeholders of education. Thank you very much and God bless you all.